All right, let's get started. 7 o'clock. Cam, we rolling? Okay, so we got a lot. This is the last week. Glad you guys made it. Hope you didn't stay up too late last night. So, want to hit the ground running, and not even going to cover all the material that's in the book, which I'm surprised at, because in Gottman we got all of it this time. Not going to get everything. But I wouldn't get the most important thing. So we're going to talk about the 6 different kinds of conflict tonight. So you need your homework would be like to figure out, okay, what kind of conflicts do we normally have? But this is going to. I always find when you're struggling, things are challenging. It's just, if nothing else, it's helpful to be able to categorize what actually is taking place. So if there's 6 different kinds of conflict, probably 1 or 2 or 3 of these, 1 or 2, are probably going to emerge quite a bit, and it's just helpful to be able to say, oh, that's what's going on. It also is slightly going to change your approach on some things. Now, we have these 2 questions we started off, and I like these questions. I threw them up because they're so easy. They're so quick. Rebecca is trying to see past me. Okay, so simple, right? They are simple questions, but they get the ball rolling. And when you ask your spouse this, it's like it's giving them permission to speak. What's so funny about that?
Because it's stuff that you normally don't talk about.
Yeah, exactly. Now, there might be some of us who are like always wanting to spill our guts, and there's some of us who are like the opposite of that. Now, I'm going to say later on, when we get to one of the conflicts, the type of people that don't spill their guts, the opposite of that, they need to be pursued. Because what I want you all to understand is everybody, if you're a human, you need to be able to connect emotionally. And I was talking to a little kid in front of my house the other day, and there was times when he doesn't want to play with Martez. And Martez goes over there, and he's like, he's all excited to play, and they've been really good friends for a little while. And then he's sent home, and he's all confused. And it's like, what happens is this little kid is going through a lot of stuff, brokenness in the home, what have you, like everybody. And so he just needs some me time. But he's confused about what's going on with him, and he's not able to communicate it. So here's this one more example. You see it everywhere. If we can't just communicate what we're going through, how we feel in the presence of compassion, then that burden, those negative emotions, we carry with us a lot longer. Now, a lot of times our responses, they're coming out of our brokenness, and I want to demonstrate that for you right now. So I want you to think about your response. If your spouse is asking you these questions, how do you feel about us? What am I doing that hurts or bothers you? How would you want to respond? What kind of, we're practicing self-awareness. You step outside of yourself and you're observe yourself. What kind of response are you having? Is it easy, nothing? Now, if it's easy, nothing for you, then you have to ask yourself, are you really taking the time to do this? Are you just kind of brushing it off? Now, if you have some kind of visceral response, I want you to be aware of that. And then I want to make this connection for you right now with this next and final slide. I want you to take this in. So this is from something else. This isn't from this curriculum, but he said this pretty much all throughout the book. So if notice this, on one side it says brokenness and wholeness. Now, what are the kind of responses we have a tendency to have? So someone says, hey, I asked Rebecca, is there anything about me that's bothering you? I expect her to say, no, you're the best husband in the world. How could there ever be anything that bothers me? Right? I want an A+ on that report card, maybe an A-. But that's just not the case. So, if I don't give her the space to be able to speak and hey, this thing's bothering me, then it's not going to go away, sweeping it under the rug. So I can say, if I'm having a response that's defensive or low in self-awareness, or I'm retreating back into isolation, I just want to blame her. How am I doing? What's bothering me? All the things about you. But like, I have to ask myself the question, like, why do those things bother me about her? Like, why am I having a hard time loving her? If those things do bother me, why can't I communicate those things in a loving, gentle way? For me, gentleness is my ultimate test for if I'm in the Spirit or not. Gentleness. Quick to blame, reactive. We talked about reactive versus responsive. That was a helpful distinction. Fearful. Like, if you take that fearful and moved it all the way to the very bottom, is a sense in which everything above it would be emerging from the fear. So, like, is it okay? Is it a sin to be fearful?
God says to fear Him.
That's a different thing. Like, I'm going to say it's submission. But, like, fearful, like, we're told throughout the Scripture, fear not. Like, so many times. But, like, is it sin to be fearful? I don't think it's a sin to be fearful because we're told cast your fear on Him because He cares for you. But like it's one thing to be reactive and like do a meltdown, like engage towards your spouse based on fear. That's one thing. But saying, hey, I'm feeling afraid. You may not want to use that language, like, but essentially if that's what it is, like I'm feeling very fearful right now. And it allows your spouse to move towards you with compassion. Self-absorbed, addicted, dishonest. So if I just realize that, man, I don't think I can say, well, thanks for pointing that out, Timothy. Now I can be approachable, high in self-awareness, connected, quick to take responsibility, non-reactive, courageous, self-giving, free, honest. What we need to be able to do is say, hey, I'm wanting to blame you right now, or I'm feeling very defensive. And for me, in my marriage, like a lot of times I didn't even know why I was getting so defensive. And I really appreciate Rebecca being patient with me. So all I'm saying is, with this self-awareness response, questions like that, let's go back to that previous slide, because they're so simple. But yet, with these questions alone are enough for some of us sometimes to have a fight or flight response. And so that I would argue that that's probably going to continue to happen if we don't say, where's that coming from? So just getting understanding, like thinking through it, and I don't want to tell you what it all comes from your childhood. Like, I'm not trying to give you some stereotypical answer, but if you do the work, and I'm telling you, doing that work with someone else that cares about you is so much better than trying to do it by yourself. It's so confusing by yourself, right? So much helpful to have people. So I just want you to see that. I want you to just have that in your framework with reference to conflict in marriage. A lot of times, that chart we just saw is what's going on. And we're taking out our brokenness on our spouse. Okay. Agree or disagree? Anybody want to push back on that? If you want to push back, feel free to do so. It's good discussion. David. Yeah. So I say, and. So let's use your examples, because you gave two great examples, real life, right? Toilet being left up. That's something that can definitely change. But let's say it can't change. And what was the second one now? The laugh. So you married the person. So I would immediately want to ask, did that laugh bother you while you were dating? And a lot of times what Gottman's pointing out is this, with reference to, let's say, unchangeable things. Gottman is really helpful, and he says there's things in a marriage that are not ever going to be resolved. And what's important is if you keep positive sentiment override, which means you have a lot of positive things going on in the background, like a lot of good experiences, and those bleed over into the things that are challenging, so that you end up having a lot of grace for your spouse.
Some people call that a love tank.
A love tank. Yeah. So, Yeah, it's really good. So I think if you have those positive sentiment overrides, those experiences like connecting emotionally, then you have a lot more grace for things that might annoy you without that. Anything else, Cliff?
I've noticed what you said earlier when you have somebody go through that with you and you're talking to somebody. Sometimes you don't realize what you're saying, and when you say it to somebody else and then repeat it back to you, it's like, wait a minute, I didn't mean it to sound like this or say it like this. I meant this instead.
Yeah.
Just be able to talk through it really helps.
Yeah.
I don't like the way my wife laughs. Saying that out loud is horrible.
Yeah. And having someone there that'll listen without pouncing on you right away. See, because like sometimes, like it is so true. Like things sound a certain way in your head. As soon as you speak them out loud, they can shift. There's a beautiful thing about that. So we're going to hit the ground running tonight, but again, I want you to have that framework of a lot of times, like I just thought, oh, Rebecca is annoying me, or she's frustrating me, she's irritating me, and it's as simple as that. But like my response, my reaction to her wasn't warranted. Like it's a rather trivial thing, so why am I going from 0 to 60 in half a second? Because I'm having a fight or flight response. So again, I'm just saying, if I don't go back and do that work, like where's that coming from, and talk through that in the presence of a compassionate witness, then there's no reason to expect it'll go away. Okay? We want to lessen the amplitude. So God gave us community. We're made in the image and likeness of God who exists in community. We need that. Those are all theological reasons for why this is true. Now, so here we go. 6 different kinds of conflict. And again, I want you to be thinking about which ones emerge the most for you. So, stop me. I want to get through this tonight, and I want to end on time. So, if you have a question or pushback, please raise your hand, because that's important. There is a difference between coming home late and deciding where we're going out for dinner. One is a sin. One is not. I'll let you be the judge. No, like, we want to draw this contrast. So, what kind of fight are you having? I say fight, but we could say conflict. What kind of conflict are you having? Here they are right at the beginning. The sin of one spouse. Secondly, immaturity or brokenness of one person. Okay, you can have immaturity and brokenness of 2 people. That's very much a challenge. Thirdly, hurt feelings that are no one's fault. Super important. Conflicting desires. Desires of one person versus the needs of the relationship. Known versus unknown problems. Known versus unknown problems. We're going to spend most of our time in the first 4, and these are really good. So conflict number 1, sin of one spouse. One spouse has sinned against the other. There is a true infraction, not an imagined one. Okay, it's just really helpful to have those distinctions. Okay, true infraction versus an imagined one. Okay, there is such thing as an imagined one? Yes. We'll see that in the next, in the third category. There is no shortage of areas in which we can sin. Sexual sin, angry outbursts, loss of self-control, impatience, critical attitudes, judgmentalism, out-of-control spending of the family money, stealing, lying or deception, critical attitudes, substance abuse, controlling behavior, emotionally injurious behavior, name-calling, belittling, misuse of power, pride, selfishness, greed, jealousy, envy, and finally conceit. The best thing anyone can do in the face of the sin of a spouse is to demonstrate the same attitude that God has towards someone who sins. This is so good. So basic. Can you guess what it is? The best thing we can do, so someone has legitimately, it's a real sin, they've sinned against you. Ephesians 4:32, be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other. Here's the critical part of that. Just as Christ, God, forgave you.
He desires mercy.
So the idea of the unjust debtor, The king forgives him a great debt, and he leaves the throne room and goes and tries to extract a minimal debt. The king was upset about that. He's like, why am I going to forgive you a great debt, and here you're going to hold someone for a small debt? So we started so I want to engage the person with compassion. In order to do that, I got to remember my relationship with God. So Jessica and Reggie came into counseling because she discovered he had been looking at pornography on the internet. At first, she was very hurt, of course. She felt betrayed. Then she felt that there must be something wrong with her, or he would not have been looking at pictures of other women. But after the initial chaos of such a discovery, she displayed remarkable grace in one of our sessions. How do you feel about this? She was asked, knowing about her hurt and feelings of betrayal. Well, I guess I'm past all the hurt now, she said. Well, how did you do that? I just started thinking about him, she answered. When I saw the kind of bondage he was in and how bad he felt about himself, I thought about what would drive him to such a thing. I felt sorry for him and the shame he felt. I just want you to help him find out the reason he does this and help him with it. I know that I'm not perfect either. I don't want him to do this, but I guess I started to understand his hurt. Reggie began to cry. This grace his wife showed him was far different from what he had ever received in his life, and much different from how he responded to himself. He turned to her, cried in her arms, and said, I'm so sorry I've hurt you like this. From this point on, Reggie was a different guy. He grasped the work of therapy and recovery with a passion, seeing it as a project he must do to not fall short of the grace he had been given. I was reminded of the verse about the grace of God that tells us that it is His kindness that leads us to repentance. So important, such an important principle. Jessica had offered the two most important attitudinal things that the Bible suggests in dealing with someone's hurt, dealing with someone else's sin, rather. Two most important things: humility and grace. She did not approach the sin of her husband with the idea that she was someone better than he. As Paul puts it, brothers, if someone is caught in a fault, caught in sin, you who are spiritual should restore them gently, but watch yourself, or you also may be tempted. Carry each other's burdens, and in this way fulfill the law of Christ. Galatians 6, 1 and 2. Jessica did not lord it over Reggie, saying that this was his sin and not hers. She identified with the mutual position they both had before God as sinners. She realized she was not perfect either, and then gave him the same kind of grace God gives to her. She restored him gently and watched herself and her own attitudes to make sure she remained humble. It proved to be an important aspect of Reggie's own repentance. Now, I just want to stop and say this here. I could take this as he's contradicting what we said last week, where I said, he's like your marriage is not supposed to be the place for healing, but that's very healing what she did for him. Yeah, yes. But without that response of humility and grace, so good. She did not minimize the sin. This is one of the most difficult things for some people. These people feel that if they are going to be full of grace and humility, they can't be tough on sin. Actually, no. Go soft on the person, hard on the issue. This is what Jessica did. And this is just what Gottman said too, is we want to keep the problem the problem. The problem can't become the person. Your spouse can't be the problem. There is a problem. The enemy is the devil, not your spouse. So, this is what Jessica did. She was honest, called internet pornography sin, and talked about her hurt and betrayal, but did not let Reggie's sin go unconfronted. She took a stance according to her values. Couples need to take a hard stand against anything that violates their values. And this goes back to Romans 14. You can't ask another person to violate their conscience. But you can unburden a conscience that's burdened unnecessarily. But that takes patience. Pornography violates several values: faithfulness, honesty, holiness, loving God, loving each other. Do not minimize the sin of your spouse, and ask him or her not to minimize yours. That's real love right there, isn't it? Ultimately, this will be best for both of you and for your relationship. Go tough on the issue, but remember, as God is with you, go soft on the person. Like Jesus, face sin with both grace and truth. Now, I think it's a great conversation to have with your spouse. Like, hey, when I'm in sin, it's going to be most effective if you approach me in this way. Like, your tone matters. Like I want to be able to hear it. Obviously, it's going to be on something that's challenging for me. So if you can approach me in these kind of ways, it's going to help me hear it. Because I'm going to be fighting against getting defensive. Yes. So if you can have that conversation before you're in the heat of the moment. Jeff. Yes. Yes, so good. Yeah, not in guilt and shame, condemnation, judgmental. Yeah, all that stuff. So the process looks like this. Look at your own attitude. Step one, look at your own attitude. Rid yourself of judgmentalism, condemnation, shame, or pride. I would never do that. That idea. Look at the log in your own eye, show mercy, and identify with your spouse as a fellow sinner. So the idea here is if you can't do that, you're not ready for the confrontation. It's just like, and if you're not ready for the confrontation, it's like the enemy's going to get you coming and going. There's the original sin the enemy's happy about, but then our response or reaction to the sin is like giving even more place to the devil. Okay? So secondly, speak to the issue directly. Let your spouse know that you know, and tell him that when he is doing what he is doing is not right, it's a sin against you. Let him know how you feel. Talk about the hurt and how it affects you and whoever else is involved. Don't shame him, but be honest. Use I statements. This is so good. We need to be able to communicate. This is legitimate. Like, this is my experience. When I find out that you're doing this, this is what's going on with me. And I just love that response because you're not saying, you did this, you're using I statements. This is what's going on with me. It allows your spouse, who's the sinner in this case, because conflict number one, to come alongside of you instead of like feeling like they got to put their boxing gloves on and you're the opponent they got to defend themselves against. It's a whole different posture. And of course, it starts off with, what did Jesus do for us? You know how patient Jesus is with us? How many years does he let sin go on in our lives? And he's patient, just waiting. So don't shame him, but be honest. Use I statements. Thirdly, a boundary-loving spouse will acknowledge the wrong and apologize. I don't like that word. Will acknowledge the wrong and ask forgiveness. Accept it. Offer forgiveness. Reaffirm your love and acceptance. So good. I love you. I forgive you. I want you to know I love you. I care about our relationship. All that affirmation. So I want to say, if when we handle it that way, their shame is being exposed, but they're encountering grace. Their shame is being exposed. They're encountering love and acceptance. That is like the most transformative thing I know of. Okay, it's like so much of the New Testament, particularly. Okay, so when emotions are not strong, talk about the problem to see if there's any further help might be needed. Even though he might have confessed and repented, underlying issues may need to be addressed, and he might need outside help. Offer your support and help to solve the problem. So again, there's that initial, okay, I'm taking responsibility, but there may need to be some ongoing conversations to talk through what's going on. Okay? Fifthly, agree on a follow-up plan. If we notice something again, how do you want me to help you? What do you want me to do? This way you become a team member to deal with the problem and not a police officer. You might want to talk to them about bringing other resources to the problem as well, such as friends to hold them accountable. The important issue is that you are together as a team to fight against the recurrence. Isn't that good? Rebecca? When emotions are strong, talk through the problem. So there's this initial confession, initial expression of repentance, but yeah, a lot of times there's a lot more going on. If I'm acting out of my sense of inadequacy and getting all defensive, I probably don't even realize I'm doing that. So just being able to talk through those things. And you could give a whole course on that, Rebecca. Cliff,
It's so foreign.
why? Why is it foreign? Cliff is saying it's foreign.
Because when I find myself in conversation with people talking about feelings and their actions and, you know, things like that, and if somebody else sees it, they instantly want to defend the other person. Because the person is in a place of being hurt or shamed or they're receiving grace and all the things, but you can, the common thing is, it's like, oh, this hurts my feelings, we don't talk about it, so therefore let's not confront it. It's a common thing, and here we are doing the opposite. Like, I can't, like, a good example would be, we don't talk politics because somebody's feelings are gonna get hurt. We don't talk religion because somebody's feelings is gonna get hurt. We don't talk about your feelings because your feelings are gonna get hurt. It's such a bipolar response to what we're in tonight.
Yeah. That's why I'm trying to say, like, I gave that quote last Sunday, we can either have tranquility of the senses or the transcendence of the soul. So what we're doing is like, okay, I want to run from the problem, so I want to saturate my senses, whatever that might be, whatever my go-to coping strategy is. But like at the cost of, I'm not going to have tranquility of my soul. Because in order to have tranquility of the soul is using my emotions as a communication network to tell me what's going on with me. But if I'm running from that by some sensory experience, like I'm going to the dispensary, and anime, so it can be that too. Pornography, another one. Video games, another one, potentially. Those are all things that help me run, but they always fade, go away. I wake up the next morning, my soul's still disheartened. Okay. Kurt?
Yeah, the phrase clear as kind comes to mind.
What does that mean?
Just the idea that communicating clearly instead of maybe
Clear is kind?
clear is kind.
Yeah.
Instead of like beating around the bush, trying to come across softly, giving a compliment sandwich with your criticism in the middle.
Yeah.
You know, where you feel like you've got this ability to soften the blow or to protect it. You
Yeah.
don't have that.
Yeah.
But it's like an illusion that we have.
Yeah. I think tone does all that, But like sometimes it's hard to figure out a few words to do, at least for me. Like if by the third time I say something, I can say it much more succinctly than the first time. Yeah, writing it out. That's a good one. That's really good. Okay, so that's conflict one. So basically, how do we summarize that? Be gracious to your spouse caught in a sin. Is that ever going to happen? Did you marry a sinner? Probably, right? Pretty sure you did. Yeah, me too. Me too. I married a saintly angel, yes. Okay, so conflict number 2. This is a good one. It's an important one. And confession's good for the soul. Conflict 2, immaturity or brokenness of one person. So, Jerry was frustrated with his... This is a good one, so track here. Jerry was frustrated with his wife, Jeannie. They had decided early on in the marriage that it was important for her to be at home with the children, so they had divided the duties. He worked hard, making a living for the family. Running the household was her responsibility. But Jeannie was not pulling her weight. Many things were not getting done. For example, Jerry expected her to clean the house, do the laundry, have dinner ready when he got home from work. But he would come home to a messy house, undone laundry, and that's the worst part, no dinner. In addition, she was tired when he came home, and more of the parenting responsibilities fell on his shoulders. Jerry nagged Jeannie to do more, and she became angry with him, telling him she was doing all she could. He couldn't understand why she couldn't do more and would tell her, quote, "That's how life is. You just have to buckle down and do it. I'm working hard too." She would not, so what's happening right now? Already we see that Jerry is treating conflict number 2 like it's a conflict number 1. And from his perspective, it seems like a conflict number 1. My spouse is sinning. She's not fulfilling the responsibility. That's what it looks like. That's what it looked like to me.
But she doesn't have time to punch out and go home.
You're being so gracious. Stop that. Here we go. Many things were not getting done. So Jerry nagged his wife. She became angry. Like, why didn't she get in it? He couldn't understand why she couldn't do more and would tell her. That's how life is. She would not feel very helped by his advice. She alternated between feeling bad and feeling resentment toward him for pushing her. Finally, they decided to get some counseling. Jeannie had some significant problems. Jerry had some significant shortcomings in empathy and understanding. He was having to carry much more of the load than he had agreed to. But the way he was handling his wife was way out of line. So again, we have what's going on, and then we have the response to what's going on. And aren't you glad we have a marriage vow, like in sickness and in health, richer for poorer, like better for worse? This is for worse, so that vow can kick in here. So he was doing more than he agreed to, but the way he was handling his wife was way out of line. In reality, his behavior was going to make her improvement even more difficult. Jeannie was depressed. This was the first reality they had both had to deal with. Just trying harder was not going to fix her depression. Until she dealt with her depression, again, so if we just stop right there, that chart, that brokenness, we could list out depression on the brokenness. Like that's where she's coming from. So we need to dive in there. Like, what's going on with her? Until she dealt with her depression, she would lack energy and concentration. So imagine she's walking around with full amplitude, all those unexpressed emotions, and it's working itself out into a physical diagnosis. In addition, she did not have the structure in her character to manage a house in the way both of them desired. She didn't have the structure in her character. So character, the idea of fortitude or inner strength. Growth was needed on both sides. First, Jerry had to get it. He had to learn how to accept the reality of who Jeannie was, depression and disorganization included. He had to learn that he was married to all of her infirmities included. And he had to learn what unconditional love means. He had to be coached in the realities of depression and also Jeannie's very real inabilities. So at this point in the marriage, temptation is like, okay, you're not fulfilling your side of the contract, I'm going to bounce. Is that what love does? And it's not fun, but that's what love does. Like, okay, I have to readjust. So he got some help, he got some coaching. She didn't have the ability to just snap out of it, nor did she have the ability to just get organized. Both were real limitations she was going to have to accept and love her. He was going to have to accept and love her in the midst of. Second, Jerry had to learn not to be judgmental of her, but to be supportive and find ways he could work with her. This included giving up something of the things he wanted that she could not do. Giving up expectations was not easy for him. But he was open and teachable, albeit frustrated. It helped when he looked at some of his own inabilities and could empathize and identify with hers. He had some failures in his own life. It was helpful for him to see that she was no different. Jeannie had to accept herself. She had been fighting the fact that she had a problem, in denial. She had to face the reality of her inability. This realization is an important step in fixing anything. She had been stuck in the shoulds. She had been saying, I should be able to do more. I should not be unorganized. She was still protesting the reality of who she was. She was still protesting the reality of who she was. So again, on that list, lack of self-awareness. She had to get to the point of saying, quote, I would like to not be depressed and to be more organized, but the reality is that this is where I am. Now the question is, this being reality, what am I going to do about it? So do you see how it's a whole different approach? Okay, I'm admitting, yes, I'm not depressed, I'm fine, I'm just struggling. Versus, okay, I'm going through this dark night of the soul, I got to face it, and what am I going to do about it? Once Jeannie owned this, change could begin to take place. Again, that's why coming out of denial is the first step. Change can't happen. As long as we're denying things, change will never take place. Once she faced her inability, she could get to work. Here's the plan. Step 1, work on the depression. Jeannie saw her long-standing depression as a real problem and began treatment for it. In a matter of months, she saw real progress. She had much more energy and concentration to face and solve problems of her own problem. That's oversimplification. Secondly, adjust to reality. Both Jerry and Jeannie had to reorganize their life. They had to give up some of their ambitious plans for a while until the problems were better. Their original plan had included 2 fully functioning people, and they did not have that, at least for a while. So they agreed to cut back on the things they wanted until they got to a better place. That's smart. Thirdly, work on the disorganization. Jeannie saw that her lack of structure was a real problem and that one more New Year's resolution was not going to make her more disciplined. She joined an accountability group with friends who helped her take some steps towards organization. She asked them to check up on her and make sure she had complied with the plans she had agreed to. She asked an older woman in her church to help her acquire some skills she had never learned. Great choice, Titus chapter 2. Making commitments to certain schedules and jobs was new for her, but very helpful. Soon she was getting her work done and feeling much better about life. Jerry and Jeannie did very well. She worked through her depression and began to run the home in an acceptable way for both of them to reach their goals as a family. Jerry turned into a much more compassionate, helpful person. Do you see how the good that's coming out of this? So they had to probably put their life on hold for 6 to 12 months, maybe longer. But if they hadn't done that, they certainly never would have got to their goals. It just would have been a nightmare to come home and live in that environment for the rest of their marriage. But instead, okay, we're going to put some things on hold. We're going to focus. We're going to make some adjustment. We're going to bring out some outside counsel. We're going to seek therapy. We're going to bring in the community at large. We're going to, make up that which is lacking with other people's giftedness. And then things begin to turn around. And not only is she helped, but the husband becomes more of a loving husband. And that's probably God's design. Hey, husband, I'm going to give you a wife who's depressed so you can learn to be compassionate. So that's how God usually works. In fact, part of the fault, most people get married totally unaware of their spouse's shortcomings. That's almost inevitable. In fact, part of falling in love is idealizing an imperfect person and not seeing where he or she falls short of that ideal. But in every relationship, reality eventually surfaces. When it does, it's very important to face it the following helpful ways. So the idea of this is the transition from infatuation to falling to actual love, let's say, okay? 1, accept reality. Accept reality about yourself and your spouse. Now, I definitely accept the reality about my spouse, but I definitely am in denial about myself. Both of you will be prepared for some of the realities life brings. You will not have the emotional ability to weather some stresses in the way you would like. Or you will not have the skill needed to be a mature adult. When this happens, do not be surprised. Below are some cautions areas where normal people find that they have brokenness from the past or some immaturity where they are not equipped to perform as they or their spouse would like. 1, relational abilities to get close. Not all of us go into a marriage with flawless relational abilities. The ability to get close, communicate, sustain intimacy. Okay? We can grow in that area. Parenting abilities. Emotional problems from the past or from the family of origin. Lack of structure, self-discipline, or follow-through. Financial inabilities to make or manage money. Sexual difficulties from fear, past trauma, shame, or other emotional factors. That's a big deal. Not having completed the two-ness and identity formation talked about previously. Not having completely left home to become an adult, ready for marriage. Not a great time to leave your boyhood behind after you already get married. Hopefully some of that's going on before, right? None of these are sins. They are areas in which you are immature and need to grow. Emma, it's so good that you're here. I just getting a head start on life. I'm kind of jealous. Wish I had this information at your age, truly. If one of you makes them out to be, okay, so none of these are sins. Do you catch that, the second category? It's brokenness, and we're giving gracious, okay, this is what you bring. We all bring some brokenness with us into the marriage, and these crazy authors are saying this is not sin. None of these are sins. They are areas in which you are immature and need to grow. If one of you makes them out to be a sin or demands that they not be present because you wanted an ideal partner, you are prolonging the problem. Accept reality. It's like he's jumping out of the page and punching you in the face, like, wake up. I thought that was so gracious but helpful.
So you're saying that it can become a sin if you don't want to face it?
Yeah, that would be a different thing. So the original thing is not the sin, but your response to it becomes the sin. So, yeah, and like if my wife was, I hate to even say this out loud, was diagnosed with cancer, God forbid, would I consider to be in sin for that? Like, is she a sinner because she has a medical diagnosis? So, like, I think that's just really concrete. Obviously not. It's really concrete for us to see that. So, like, if it would be easy for us to have compassion, for me to have compassion for my wife, if that's the case. But, like, sometimes we struggle having the compassion when it's the brokenness that's emerging. Like, we'd have compassion for the cancer, but not for the fact that you come from a broken home, there was abuse or whatever. You know? And, like, no, I think the author is pointing out, like, no, we need to put those in the same category. Have compassion. Is that clear? Okay. Secondly, communicate your support to your spouse. We do not grow when we are judged, nagged, condemned, resented, or subjected to some other lack of grace. Do you see what they just categorized as a broad category? Lack of grace. Can I just say those again?
Yes.
Those are all, he's like removing all the tools from my toolbox. Like I have no tools left. What am I going to do? How am I even going to talk to my wife if I can't judge her, if I can't nag her, if I can't condemn her, if I can't be resentful towards her? Controlling towards her? Like, what have I got left? Oh, all you got left is grace. I think that's the point. Love. So we all need to feel that someone is on our side and supporting us. So if I'm struggling in my brokenness, is it going to be helpful for someone to come at me and condemn me for it? No, I feel like that's, kicking me while I'm down. So let your partner know that you're the biggest supporter and reaffirm your absolute unconditional love and acceptance for them, just like she is. I tell you what, when I'm weak and when I'm responding to that weakness, not good, and when my wife gets that and gives me grace I don't deserve, I'm not admitting it, right? I'm giving her a hard time because I'm kind of acting like it's her fault or whatever. And I know I'm not acting it right, and I'm being all defensive for my brokenness, and then she sees through all that and just gracious to me. It is absolutely amazing. And it's disarming. And you know how much strength it takes on her part to do that for me? I don't deserve it. I wasn't earning it. And yet, she loved me all the same. So I just like, that's the idea of we got to stay above the fray. And I love how that one pastor's wife said, if something's dirty in the mud, don't reach down and pick it up. Leave it there. Okay?
It's not your first feeling even. You have to kind of move past your own feelings of wanting to, fill in the blank.
Yeah. Yeah. It just seems like sometimes I don't see that. Like I just see the grace. And like it's just like, wow, it's beautiful. Now, I don't want to admit that in the moment, but I need to go back and let my wife know that. That was amazing what you did. As 1 Thessalonians 5:14 tells us, encourage the timid, help the weak, be patient with everyone. So let your spouse know that their weakness or inability is something with which you will be supportive and patient. I think that is different than saying, hey, this is my brokenness, you can't touch it. It's carte blanche to continue down this road indefinitely. Is that different? I'm not doing a great job of there. Yeah, I think you have to work that one out. Subtle difference there. Yes.
I think, like, you know how you always say, go from infatuation to love? And I think part of that, or like a big expression of that, is when you see your spouse and their faults, but you're still like, I know, they have those faults. It's okay, I love them, I want to help them with that, instead of like, that's the target, I want to shoot,
Yeah, that's legit love right there. That's so beautiful. That's worth the whole night right there. We could just stop right there. What a gift. Thirdly, face issues as real problems. Although we don't wish to be non-supportive or lack grace, we also wish to be honest about problems. It would not have been truly loving for Jerry to ignore Jeannie's depression, right? Or her disorganized life. Part of love is not mature. Let them know. Be direct. Be direct. Tell her what you see as a problem. Let your spouse know how you feel and how it affects you. But be careful to stay away from shame and condemnation. Quote, I understand your difficulty, Jeannie. I really do. But at the same time, I would like us to be able to do some things together again. I get lonely. I want you to get your depression treated so we can have fun again. This kind of communication can be motivating, not condemning. Motivating, not condemning. Make sure that you are both clear that there is a need for growth. Own your problems. If you are the one confronted with your immaturity, own it. Be a boundary lover. Be the kind of wise man or woman who loves to get feedback and heeds it. Don't be defensive and try to learn from the person who sees you every day. I love that. Don't be defensive. Try to learn what the person who sees you every day is learning about you. Don't fight the truth as well as the problem itself. Five, get a plan. Jeannie and Jerry designed a plan to deal with the immaturity issues. They received help from others. You will have to do that as well. No matter who you are, we need help, mentoring, support, teaching. No one ever grew up on his own. Some need therapy, others need financial counseling, still others need support groups, recovery groups, some need accountability systems, but make sure that your immaturity or brokenness does not rule you. Overcome it by being intentional about dealing with it. Devote resources, time, and energy to the problem. Sixth, and lastly on this one, make it mutual. Guard against labeling one spouse the problem person. I mean, in our marriage, that would probably be me, right, Rebecca? Oh, yeah. This is, thanks for agreeing with me. Yeah, you're so right about that. This is never true. The problem person, this is never true. Just because Jeannie had the more noticeable problems did not mean that she was the only one who had some growing up to do. Neither of you is complete person yet. You're both still growing up. Guard against the one who is the most Guard against the one who is the most functional being seen as the okay one. Isn't that good? That's hard. God says that you're equal in His eyes, and you should be equal in each other's as well. You hear that, Rebecca? Usually one of you has to grow more in the relational area, such as the expressed feelings and confronting problems. Okay? That would be me again, probably. So someone has to grow in the relational area, the ability to express feelings. How are you doing, Timothy? Fine. That's all I can say. The other has to grow in the functional area of life, such as advancing in a career and getting things done. Help each other in your areas of weakness. Remember, you are one now, and if one of you is suffering, so is the other. There is no one-upmanship here. Both of you are loving the other as part of yourself. You are one. You are both in need of growth. Equality and mutuality can solve a lot of problems. If you are working as a team, you are no longer individuals in the way singles are. Make the equality mutual and make the problems mutual so that you can help each other. Now, how is any of that going to happen if we're still back there in denial? If I can't even admit that I'm struggling? If I can't stop and ask for directions? Okay, so that was conflict number 2. Any pushback questions, cares, or concerns?
I think when we start relationships, we see the best in a person. And somehow, when, as a relationship grows, we see all the defects, and we make it all about that. We lose sight of the very thing that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And I think a good reminder that God, when He made us, He says, this is good. You're good.
Yeah.
He sees the best in us all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Like Kurt and then Jeff, but like I'm trying to ponder what you're saying there because,
When we're on our wedding day, I'm thinking the best version of my life.
yeah,
And when it gets to the hard stuff on the worst days, it's hard for me to remember the best
Yeah.
day.
yeah, yeah. It's good. Kurt?
There's a concept called the identified patient in like family therapy, where the black sheep, quote unquote, the family comes in. Everybody's like, no, he's the problem.
Right.
He'll say I'm the problem, but really he's emblematic of the family system malfunction.
Yeah. Yeah. So good. So the black sheep scenario, it's not just the black sheep that's the problem, it's the reaction or response of the family to the black sheep or creating the black sheep in the first place, let's say, a lot of times. Jeff? Yeah. One second, I can't hear you. We have this...
Praise, love, mercy. I don't even know why that came up.
That crazy lady in the front row. Sorry, Jeff, can you please start again? You said real life. Uh-huh.
Let's say the spouse is a really bad driver.
Yeah. Yeah.
The spouse thinks, I'm a great driver. Why do you have a problem with my driving? I've never gotten in an accident. I'm a good driver.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with an issue like that with grace?
I immediately knee-jerk think of, well, you already have the answer probably to this question, don't you?
Well, I mean, I would try to make it do it my way, but I'm asking you.
I immediately think of Matthew 18, 2 or 3 witnesses. And like, I like to get out, sources that they respect and let the source they respect say the same thing I'm trying to say. Like if they're a Calvinist, I want to quote John Calvin. If they're an Arminian, I want to quote, Jacob Arminius, like that kind of thing. Or like, I'll just get out the driver's handbook. Or I'll read statistics about, here's what it says about texting and driving. Just, so.
Model of when you, and then be specific, when you tailgate, I feel very unsafe. That can help me feel safe if you give a little more space to the cars.
Yeah, I do like to, that's good, Kurt. I'm coming to you, David. I like the idea of state some kind of common knowledge fact and then phrase something in the form of a question. Like how is that, because most people would agree, according to this, that this is what bad driving looks like. I notice it seems to me you do that sometimes. How would you not consider that bad driving? So like, I'm kind of pointing it out, but like, assuming they have a good reason for why they do something super crazy, everybody else agrees, that's
Literally what we do.
and then I wait for the response because like Cliff was saying earlier, their idea for why they're doing probably makes a lot of sense in their head, but once they verbalize it, if I can get them to actually verbalize what their actual thinking is, it might lose some of its grip. David.
I had the same problem before, and I had her watch some road rage videos and tailgating videos when that is happening. That kind of helped a little bit.
That's good. So good.
I like the witness thing, 2 or 3.
Yeah, that's good. Guy?
You always have accidents as an arbiter.
Yeah.
Yeah, life's consequences.
Life will give you points on your license. For free. Yeah. Conflict 3, and this is a good one. This is a good one. Conflict 3, hurt feelings that are no one's fault. Ooh, that's a good one. Hurt feelings that are no one's fault. No one's fault? I didn't know that was even an option. George arrived home, because like the objective for every fight is just to figure out whose fault it is. That's all we really care about, okay? And then once we figure that out, we're done talking. Oh, it was your fault. Okay, good. It's your fault. Bye-bye. No. So George arrived home from work to find the house empty. He had thought Mary would be there, as it was after 6 p.m. She usually was home in the late afternoon. He was surprised, but did not think a lot about it. He started reading the paper and watching CNN. So, yeah, there. Yeah, see, this book was written in the late 90s. A lot's happened since then. We don't even do mainstream media anymore, hardly, right? What do you call it? Legacy media? We don't even do that anymore. Sorry, guys, CNN. Do you remember people used to call it Communist News Network? That was my grandparents called it growing up. Yeah. Well, that's a whole, man, I'm going to be easily distracted on this. Let's get back. So what do you think is happening here? I'm kind of stalling for Amber to get back because I want her to hear this so good. So automatically when we read that, I'm thinking, okay, she's out doing something super bad, super naughty, okay? And I'm scared for him. He's going to find out she is doing something really bad, okay? Like cheating on him somewhere, okay? That's an interesting idea. Maybe. Let's read on, Emma. Thanks for tracking. Let's read on. That's possible, I guess. I guess you might be right. When she did come in, she was excited to see him. Can you believe it? Well, if she was excited to see him, she must have been faking it. She was acting, right? She was just trying to put on so he would be distracted. She went over to him and gave him a big kiss. He gave her a weak smile. Thinking that he had just had a hard day, she let it pass. Later at dinner, now was that some passive-aggressive stuff right there? Was he withholding affection a little bit? Was he punishing her? Let's read on. She let it pass. How gracious of her. Later at dinner, George was not very talkative. Man, I relate to this too much. He took his plate and went to watch TV. She finished her dinner and started doing some chores. What a good woman. George went to bed. Oh, and when she went to their room, that's good, he was asleep. Oh, this is just bad. This is definitely him punishing her, don't you think? By this time, she thought something was up. So she woke him up. That's a good idea. At first, he was defensive. How dare you wake me up? And then he began to get teary-eyed. Finally, he let her know that he was feeling sad and alone. Why? Mary wanted to know, since it had something to do with her. Well, I came home to see you and you were gone. You didn't get here until a long time later. You just ignored me. What do you mean? It was not late when I got here, and besides, I was out getting the shirts you wanted exchanged. I think you're on to something, Emma. I was doing your errand. In other words, great, and just forgot that I exist while you're out gallivanting on one of your shopping sprees. I'm sure that you found some more to do as well. Fine, get your own shirts next time, or get your own Christmas gifts next time, right? Mary went back to the den and watched a late movie. George went to sleep. Neither one felt very good about what had happened. What had happened was a familiar pattern in their relationship. One of them feels hurt. The hurt person communicates as if the other has sinned against them. The accused party gets defensive. They go to court, defending their innocence. They end up alienated. The problem never gets resolved, and they go on forgetting about it the next day. Sadly, this pattern happens in many relationships. In reality, neither George nor Mary had committed a transgression, but George was hurt. This hurt was no one's fault. It was not a sin for her to run errands. She had not committed to being home to meet him at a certain time. Neither had George done anything to get his feelings hurt. It had just happened. Growing up, George was a latchkey kid. Where you have your own house key, because mom and dad are both gone when you get home from school. You walk home or take the bus, and you let yourself in, you're alone for 2 or 3 hours? What is a latchkey? I don't remember. Oh, yeah. I don't think that's the original meaning. That's probably what.
We're talking about something from 1990.
Were you in your childhood in the 90s?
No, yeah, but were you a child of the 90s?
Yeah, us Gen Xers, we know about this stuff. Really? No, I am. You couldn't be.
I'm a child.
Oh, I meant teenage. Okay, yeah, okay, good, gotcha. Are you sure? No, I was kidding. I'm just kidding. You're right. I'm sure you know your own life. I'm sure you're right. Okay, so I relate to this a lot. So when you're hurt, acknowledge it to yourself. This is really good. Know yourself well enough to know when something is bothering you and your own feelings. So again, you're stepping out of yourself, self-awareness. George did not really observe what was going on inside himself. Don't ignore how you feel. Figure out what is bothering you. If you don't know what it is, at least acknowledge, hey, something's wrong. So here's the idea. If I can say, hey, it's one thing to admit to my wife, hey, I'm struggling. You inadvertently, unintentionally hurt my feeling. I'm feeling like my feelings are hurt. I'm just sharing that with you. I'm sorry. I'm feeling really weak in admitting that to you right now. Versus passive-aggressively withholding affection and punishing your spouse. Again, one of them allows my spouse to come alongside of me, be compassionate with me. The other one turns her into my opponent. It took me a long time just to realize I can share. As a man, I felt like I was weak. Like real men aren't allowed to have their feelings hurt. I'm fine. I'm good. No, I'm good. I'm just being really mean to you right now. Because you deserve it. That's the right thing to do. To be mean to you because I have to punish you.
Don't you know my name is Lord?
Yeah, ouch, ouch, ouch. So, don't ignore how you feel. Okay, secondly, communicate. This is so simple. Tell your spouse you're hurt by something she did. Don't blame your spouse as if she has sinned. Unlike George, so distinction there, unlike George, take ownership for the hurt as coming from inside of you. Communicate that you know it is your problem, that you just want your spouse to understand. This couple's evening would have been different if George had said, I know you did not do anything wrong, but I felt all alone and sad earlier when I came home and you weren't here. It reminded me of a lot of feelings I used to have. Again, using I statements to talk about your own feelings, making sure that you don't sound as if you're blaming your spouse. Yes?
I love Brene Brown's approach to that, which is frame it with the story I'm telling myself
Yeah.
and then describe the situation and how you're feeling.
Yeah. That's a really great way to communicate. The story I'm telling myself is, because that's exactly what we're doing. We have some kind of narrative, and we're operating out of that narrative.
That's really hard to do that.
What's that? Really hard to do?
Yeah, because then you become weak.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've been vulnerable.
Yep. And that's not really weakness. Vulnerability is not weakness. It's actually strength. But it feels, it's easy to misinterpret those feelings. So communication. Thirdly, empathize. If you're on the other end of the hurt, showing empathy for your spouse's feelings, know that by caring and offering empathy, you are not saying that it's your fault. If you can identify with your spouse's feelings, offer that as well. So I can empathize without saying, yeah, I was wrong. I shouldn't have gone out. I should have been here. I just should have known mysteriously that you were going to be home early. So you can empathize without admitting you're wrong in this case. If you can identify with your spouse's feelings, offer that as well. I know what that feels like. I can understand why you felt so sad. I don't like feeling alone either. Be a healing agent for the hurt of the past. When you offer understanding, instead of devaluing your spouse's feelings, you are doing the opposite of the one who caused the original hurt and are becoming part of the healing instead of the problem. So good. Fourthly, identify patterns and plan. Learn what hurts you. Then you can anticipate that things might hurt you in the future. And when it happens, you can take precautions to respond helpfully, or better yet, avoid the hurt altogether. If you see situations coming up, you can plan for them so that hurt does not happen. I talked to a couple the other day who were planning for a few hectic weeks. They knew that the wife was subject to feeling imposed upon and taken for granted when things grew busy. They talked about how she would feel in advance and took some steps to make sure it would not happen. One was for her to give an early warning signal. If you start to feel imposed upon or taken for granted, let me know immediately, he said. And of course, when I read that, I wonder, is it possible that we can get to the place where we don't have to have our feelings hurt in those same areas decade after decade? I want to say, I can testify, I mean, it is possible, and it is such a blessing to be finally freed from those things that used to hurt my feelings. I don't know. It's just a blessing. And I look back and I'm like, man, I wish I could have gotten there. I could have gotten there earlier. So, fifthly, be in a healing mode. We are all responsible for the hurts we carry around inside. If you've become aware of a repetitive theme or hurt, call it a problem and obtain some help. Do something to pursue healing in that area so that it stops interfering with your life. That is part of becoming a complete, healed person. Now, as we said from week 1, how do we do that? That simple plan, again and again and again. It's always the same. Tell your story in the presence of compassion so you can reassign the meaning of that past experience. Telling your story, working through that, what's going on inside of you. So bringing your self-awareness and externalizing it in the presence of compassion or love is transformative. So you got to talk it out in the presence of another human that cares about you. Sixth, finally, guard against going to court. You can spend a lot of time in court in a marriage. You can spend a lot of time in court. And it's just like, do you really want to go to court? Who wants to go to court? Oh, I can't wait to go to court. It's so much fun to go to. Every time I go to court, I'm like, this is a terrible place. Don't like being there at all. What George and Mary did, I don't go to court a whole lot, just so you know. I try to obey the law.
Remember when the defense attorney waved at us?
Oh yeah, you again. No, I don't remember that. That was the other pastor I used to hang out with. Yeah. What George and Mary did is what gets couples stuck. They tried to find out who was wrong. And this is a game we can play. Like I said earlier, all we're trying to do is figure out who's to blame. Like, you're to blame. No, you're to blame. You're to blame for these reasons. No, you're to blame for these reasons. Oh, get her out of here. What? No. They tried to find out who was wrong. Of course, they never could, for no one was. In this case, validate each other's feelings because what your spouse is feeling is real and true for them. Remember, you don't need to win or be right. You are not in a court. There is no judge and jury. What is important is that your hearts connect with empathy for whoever is hurting. Marriage is a place where old hurts get stepped on. This is inevitable. But old hurts can heal as you respond differently to your spouse than he has been responded to in his past life. That's the key. Every time I reveal my shame, I experience more shame. What's transformative here is I reveal my shame because it's going to emerge in the process of a relationship with any kind of intimacy. But instead of my shame emerging and I'm met with more shame, I'm actually met with affirmation, and acceptance, and love. And it's so transformative. Okay. So that being said, become a healing agent with empathy, understanding, non-defensiveness, and care. So there's this idea that we can speak the truth. We're not sweeping it under the rug, but we start off with compassion and love and affirmation, all these things. And we create an environment where it's actually safe to admit our shortcomings and our failures. Like the idea of, I can't admit my failures. I can't admit my weakness because as soon as I do, I'm going to lose in court. The prosecuting attorney is going to destroy me.
Guilty.
Yeah. Jeff.
So, you know what's coming to my mind is, you know, the Bible passage where it says, before you get to court,
Settle.
bring out, settle before. So that would fit there.
Yeah, it would.
Settle before, so like if that person would have said it originally right off the bat, hey, that really hurt me that you came late like this, I was expecting you, before you go to court, before you start giving your prosecuting attorney and all that,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
deal with it first.
Yeah,
That's like a great principle.
yeah.
Before it blows up and becomes this thing you don't want.
Yeah, and you're sleeping alone. So, I want to say something. Yeah, it can end that way. So, can I say something too? I want to add some bonus points here for someone who can somewhat a little bit relate to the hurt husband here in this story. If you want to speed up this process, pursue us. Not that we deserve it. But if you pursue us and realize what's going on, that our feelings are hurt, I don't even like the language of "you hurt my feelings," because that kind of communicates that you did it intentionally, and I don't think in this story it was done intentionally at all. My feelings are hurt. I think it, you know, I just say, like, I don't like that I'm feeling so weak right now, and I don't even like that I care so much about this situation. Like, I just wish I could have been okay, but I'm not, and I'm just letting you know that. So, but that being said, like, if you're that person who, like what he was doing, he was stonewalling, wasn't he? He was withholding affection. He was passive aggressive. He was acting like, I'm fine, and then, you know, goes to bed early and... He could have, yeah. Well, this is the 1990s. He could have sent her a page. Is that what you call it? 911.
Come out till late 90s, depending on when this happened.
This was 98 or 99.
When it was written,
Yeah,
the event happened before that.
yeah. So, but I want to say, like, what's been really helpful for me, and again, I didn't deserve it, is when I went into that knee-jerk response of, I'm being passive-aggressive, I'm withholding affection from my wife, where she would see past all that and pursue me anyways and bring me into her. Oh, amazing. Not that I deserved it, but it's almost like, this is getting real intimate. Like, I feel like a little boy again, and like, so defenseless. And, but I tell you what, you have a few of those experiences, and you get to the place where you grow past, like, okay, I don't have to have my feelings hurt. I am loved. Because, like, you know what's going on in our heads when that's happening? Is we are questioning whether we are actually loved. There's a prosecuting attorney in our heads that's given us all the reasons why our spouse actually doesn't love us. And it seems like it's very real. And so so what do we do when we don't feel we're loved? What are we doing? We're putting our armor on and we're withholding affection. You could say yes to punish your spouse, but also to protect ourselves. So if someone is doing all that, in the midst of all that, someone says, like, forget all that. I love you. Give me here. I'm so sorry your feelings were hurt. You know I love you so much. It cuts through all our defenses and gives us what we actually want. We want assurance that we're actually loved. We are not making it easy for anybody to see that, but when my wife has been able to see through all that and just gave me everything my soul is actually wanting to have, it was transformative. And then I can get to the place where, again, that's what I'm saying last week, where it's like healing is coming out of my marriage because I have enough of those affirmations of love. I'm actually loved, even in my shame, even in my weakness. I'm embraced. I get to the place where I don't need those embraces like I used to. I like them, but I don't have to withhold affection anymore. Like, I'm not nearly as vulnerable to wanting to retaliate in that way. So loved into loving once again. Cliff, you had...
I think the reason why the Bible says greet each other with affection is because of what truth.
That's a great point. You guys are making great points. All y'all. All y'all. So, yeah. Just like I'm for you, because like what we do in our head is like maybe those people at church really don't like me. Maybe they don't really understand me. Maybe they do secretly judge about me. Maybe they're talking about me behind my back. So like greet each other with a hug. I think that's what the newer translations say.
Newer translation
A handshake. Handshake. Like, I put my gloves on first, put my mask on, now I'll shake your hand. Okay, this fourth one is good. Again, but probably 2 and 3 are my favorites. Conflict 4, conflicting desires. Think of the following inevitable outcomes. Let me check the time. Okay, 8:15. We're going to end on time. Think of the following inevitable conflicts. One person likes adventure movies, the other likes romantic comedies. So true. One wants to spend money on the house, the other wants to save for the future. One likes the church that focuses on contemporary worship, the other likes traditional liturgy. One wants to go out, the other wants to stay home. One wants more children, the other wants none. The other one wants no more. And doesn't want the ones they already have. Just kidding. That's terrible. Wherever you have two people, you're going to have conflicting desires. Like, I'm really grateful my wife is the one that brought me into being a vegan. It would be a nightmare for one of us to be, vegan and one to be non-vegan. That would be... You're wrong. You're so wrong. I was just trying, yeah. My feelings are hurt. No, they're fine. Okay. So you're going to have conflicting desires. This doesn't mean your spouse is a sinner in this area. It is one of the things that makes a relationship what it is. Two people bring differences to the table. In fact, your differences are part of what brought you together. You complement each other. As we mentioned in an earlier chapter, normally two people develop a pattern of give and take, and differences get negotiated, but sometimes they hit a stalemate. A few principles can help. 1, avoid moralizing your preference. All real Christians like documentaries over and above romantic comedies. If I watch this romantic comedy, I feel like I'm wasting my life. The life is being sucked out of me. Okay, I was working with a couple who differed in how they like to spend free time. Joe liked to spend downtime leisurely, hanging around the house. He would play games with the kids, watch sports on TV. On Saturday afternoons, he would sometimes take a nap. Susan was more of a doer. She liked to do projects around the house when she had free time. But after organizing the house and working on projects while Joe was napping, she would begin to grow annoyed that he wasn't helping. Soon an argument would ensue. She would feel that he was being lazy, and he would feel that she was being compulsive. Compulsive.
Scripture says, do not hinder each other with nap time.
Oh. I don't know if it... Oh, I get it. I don't know if the rest of us get it, but I get it. You don't even I can't believe you felt like you had to repeat that. That's a euphemism for all y'all. No, you won't. Susan would moralize her position, thinking that work was good and TV was bad. He should be helping. He would feel strongly about his choice, saying that he had worked hard all week and deserved a rest. Although this was not an issue of right and wrong, each would make a case of being on the moral high ground, and they would not get anywhere. So it's preferences. Humans tend to see what they prefer as right. Confirmation bias. Especially if one of the preferences have a moral-sounding quality to it, like working and accomplishing something. For some spouses, relationships could be the moral high ground, while the partner might prefer solitude. Make sure you realize that your desire is not a higher one than your spouse's. Do not try to win by making yours right and your spouse's wrong. These are preferences, not laws. You want to push back on that?
No, that's a really, really good point.
Oh, wow. Was not expecting that. Okay, great. What? Yeah. Yep. Evidence, concrete. 2, empathize.
You're having way too much fun.
Empathize with and understand the importance of your spouse's desires. That's a great idea. I haven't thought of that. Avoid devaluing what your spouse wants. What you want is stupid. You shouldn't want it. Hey, that's not a good idea. Stay away from statements that make it sound as if she would want what she wants is less important than what you want. Her desires are just as real to her as yours are to you. Validate her desires as real and good. If she likes movies that have more drama than action, saying that you don't want to go to some cheesy chick flick is not helpful. Say, okay, I see that you would want to see that. I see why you'd want to see that film. It sounds as if you've had a lot of. It has a lot of meaningful things to you. Thirdly, move to meet your spouse's desires before you meet your own. Seek to make sure that your spouse gets their desires met before yours are met, and you will avoid most arguments. In reality, this is not going to happen often, but your attitude is what is important. Let your spouse pick the car or the movie or the vacation. There will always be a next one. If necessary, keep an account of yours, mine, and others. So he gives some assignment saying, hey, keep track on a piece of paper, keep score of how much time and money, and then figure out whose turn it is. And they respond by saying, we're insulted. We're not children. We don't need stupid rules like that. He's like, oh, yes, you are. He says, you're acting just like children. Each of you wants your own way. So I'm going to chaperone to make sure it's all fair. Bring your report to me next week. They finally agreed. Although they were embarrassed by their level of immaturity, but the system worked. They fell into the habit of remembering that two people shared finite resources like time and money. I don't think that's necessarily mature. This system is valuable for couples with differing personalities who drift into unconscious patterns. Remember the opening story of the book. Steve was more assertive than Stephanie and got his way more because she was more adaptive. Now, what this is going to fall into is those ideas like whoever has the better memory is going to get their way more often. Because the person with a weaker memory can't remember who had it last time. My wife has an amazing memory, let me tell you. I cannot remember events, only concepts. What? Yeah. So I'm like, she's like, well, give me an instance, and I can't remember one, so then she wins.
She doesn't get hysterical, she gets historical.
Yeah. Oh, this is true. That's such a great way to put it. So this system is valuable for couples with differing personalities. Okay, we said, okay. Now, 5, don't define an I choice as a we choice. We want to watch a documentary, right, Rebecca? Okay. Some spouses who enjoy togetherness define what they want as being for the relationship when it is really for themselves. They might choose to spend all of their free time doing things together, thinking that it is a we choice, when in reality, it's an I choice. What they should be saying is, I'm choosing to spend my allotted time with you, and that must come out of my account. Such people feel cheated when the other spouse wants to do something by himself or herself. They feel as if they always give to the relationship and as if the other person is being selfish. This is not true. They are not giving to the relationship. They are making personal choices that include the other person because they don't like doing things alone or apart from the relationship. Make sure that when you want your spouse to do a we thing, he or she is really wanting to do that as well. If not, and he or she goes along, remember it is for you and not for the both of you. Count it in your column. Isn't that good? So, sixthly, I know I'm going really quickly here. I'm trying to end on time. I got 6 minutes. Make sure we's are agreed upon. Make sure you both sign off on activities that are really for the two of you. I talked to a couple recently who had lived for 3 years in a big house, and she finally admitted she resented it and hated it. He was astonished. He thought they both wanted and loved the large house, even though it took money away from the family for doing other things. The wife had gone along, had never spoken up in the beginning. It had been really been something for him, but he thought it was truly a we thing. He was appalled that she felt the way she did. And I know I found this out where my wife would be going along with me, and I had no idea she didn't want to. It was my persuasiveness or like my strong personality, and she felt like I was just rolling right over her, and I was so oblivious to it. So it was really helpful when she would speak up on it. When you both have to sacrifice for something, make sure that you're on the same page and wanting it and agreeing to it. Otherwise, make sure that you're freely giving in to the other person and will not carry a grudge or an emotional debt. That's important. Like, If I'm not sensitive to what she's thinking and what's going on with her, I don't want her carrying any bitterness to me because, like, I'm so insensitive to her feelings. Okay. Yeah. That can, I don't know, that's another concept. That's another layer, wouldn't it? That was what? I said I did 5, but I just didn't tell you it was 5. I said don't define I as a we choice. Don't define an I choice as a we choice. Yes, we need. Like, power tools are not a great gift for your wife usually.
What?
Power, yeah. That's a we choice, right? Home Depot is a we choice, right? Conflict number 6. And I'll do this one quickly, and I think this is the last one. Let me check. Well, wow, thanks for caring.
Well, I'm planning
What did I say? Oh, you're right. I didn't. Okay, here we go. Sorry, I missed it. Conflict 5. Sorry, guy. Desires of one person versus the needs of the relationship. Desires of one person versus the needs of the relationship. The rule here, on this one quickly, the rule here is that there is no rule. If there were a rule, it would be to find a balance over the long term. No relationship is going to survive if all the members are not getting some desires met. Vice versa, no relationship is going to thrive if the members get their individual needs met, and the relationship always suffers. It is good for a relationship at times to serve its members. Remember that the marriage comes first. Give the best to the relationship before your individual desires. Earn the equity to spend later. So, like, I want to pour into the relationship because there might come a time where I want to do something on my own. And I want her to be able to back into that because I've done so much for the relationship. She's happy to support that. Okay, be clear about what you want. Don't passively wish. Again, what Kurt was saying. Tell your spouse clearly. Be excited about what your spouse wants for himself or herself individually. You are one, and it is for you as well, even if it seems that it's just for them right now. Make sure that your individual desires that take away from the relationship over the long haul are not unbalanced in terms of what your spouse gets. As much as possible, make long-term plans for individual things that take away from the marriage. This way you can plan together for the sacrifice that is not spur of the moment. Immediate requests feel more like demands. I know that was fast. I'm trying to finish this. Okay, 2 minutes. Conflict 6, known versus unknown problems. In marriage, your spouse may know more about you than you do. What? I can stop right there. In marriage, your spouse may know more about you than you do. The trick to growth is becoming partner to this secret knowledge. There is a difference between known and unknown problems, however, and they should be handled differently. Conflict in known problems. If you know about a problem, the plan to fix it is your responsibility. It is your partner's problem. If it's your partner's problem and they know about it, don't enable them. If you do, you're part of the problem. Follow through with the agreed upon consequences. Okay. Conflict in unknown problems. Agree with each other that you have permission to tell each other about what you notice. Like, I sometimes will say to my wife, hey, Rebecca, I'm seeing something. Do you want to talk about it now or do you want me to save it for later? Like, this is about something you're doing. I don't think it's good. Do you want to hear about this now or is now not a good time? Some other better time? Like, giving her that option. But see, the problem is she'll like 99% she's gonna say, hit me now. But like, it just kind of like gets rid of all the amplitude. So she feels like, okay, I'm gonna force this on you right now. If she agrees, like, okay, no, she's choosing, I'm not violating her autonomy. Okay. When you're confronted, be open, don't be defensive, like we talked about earlier on that slide. Accept the feedback, at least agreeing to look at yourself and see if it's true. Seek feedback from others also. If your friends tell you the same thing as your spouse, you might believe it more. It's like, wow, when were you guys all going to tell me? This is a conspiracy. Send feedback from others also. Okay, ask your spouse to show you each time it happens. It's a one-time occurrence, right? No, it's not. Give grace to each other in areas that are new discoveries. Change is not going to happen immediately. Okay. Thank you for that clock. We should be done right now. Can I just give you 2 more sentences? Okay, can I get permission? Raise your hand if I have permission to 2. It's kind of social pressure. No? Okay, we're going to be done. Let's pray. No, we've got to be unanimous, otherwise it's not fair. We're past. So, hey guys, that's the end of it. I'm sorry, quickly. I didn't even get everything, but we have Audible books, so I just want to commend you and say, hey, thanks for being here. This is how we maintain good marriages. It's really awesome to invest in marriage before conflict happens. So if you got any of you here are being proactive, I just want to say, well done. That's a really smart way to do it. So I'll just say in closing, we're going to have conflict. You're not weird or weak or abnormal. This is normal, but to have conflict in marriage. So the question is what you do about it, how you respond to it. Get a community of support around you, like seek out wise counsel, and it can bring you guys closer together, okay? So I want you guys to have hope, if nothing else, okay? And you guys are dismissed. I got to stop. But Kurt, I'm happy to take a question. You guys are free to go.
I heard this concept that there's such a stigma around the word vulnerability. Like, you got to be vulnerable. That feels like weakness to so many people, just innately. Maybe you could almost interchange it with the word honesty.
Oh, yeah. That's good.
Not weaponized,
Yeah.
You're being vulnerable, you're being honest about yourself.
Hey, can I give you some non-weaponized honesty? Or can I get some non-weaponized honesty? Hey, honestly, that honesty feels a little bit weaponized. So it's like, okay, well, so that's good. Yeah, honesty is a great alternative. Guy.
One-word summaries for your points.
For each of my points tonight? Oh, that's
Disability, hurt, desire, balance, no mix.
what was the last one?
No mix is less,
No mix?
as in not mixing, immiscible.
Yeah, okay, cool. That's good. Thomas Jefferson would love that. David.
One of the examples about hurt, is there a difference between being hurt and being selfish?
Yeah?
Is there? I mean, when a person's hurt by something that spouse is that really selfish?
Can be. So the question is for live stream, if you're still there, is there a difference between being hurt and being selfish? Yeah. They can be one and the same, and you can go to the past point where they're different. So we all have a certain level of selfishness when we enter marriage and throughout the marriage. So there's a sense in which, here's the way I do it, David. I want to be gracious to my spouse. I like to say, is this coming from a soul need? Because it's too easy for me to say, oh, you're just being selfish. I'd rather say the soul needs what it needs. It needs companionship. It needs acceptance. It needs a feeling of self-worth and identity and all we list out all those soul needs. And usually that's where things are coming from. I think if we get into the selfish thing, let's say it is selfishness, they're not going to be ready to hear it until you've empathized with them for quite a bit. You know what I mean? So I'm saying if there's a sequence of events, right? This first major section is the empathy, compassion, listening, and all this stuff, so you can get to the point where they're ready to hear some counsel. So this is the idea of they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Because most likely their expression of selfishness is coming from a soul need and coming from, a lot of times, brokenness. So if someone's putting their armor on with self-protection, is that them being selfish? Or is that them acting out of their brokenness? A lot of times, both. But I prefer to see it as them acting out of their brokenness because there's something I can do about that besides just condemnation and judgment. Like, stop being such a sinner. It's not usually helpful if I'm approached that way. Cliff?
I just want to add on to that. Sometimes when you're approaching somebody and you're calling them to be selfish because of their sin, sometimes we're acting selfish because we have to be right instead of letting the other person win. We're not showing them any grace or mercy or compassion.
Yeah. It's really easy to go back to court like there's a winner and there's a loser. So, and if like, okay, you're being selfish. No, I'm not. You're being selfish. No, I'm not. And like, okay, that's a lot of stalemate potential right there. Versus, where do you think this stuff is coming from? Like, no, I really care. Like, where's this coming from? Like, did you not have it, some selfish thing, did you not have enough of this resource growing up? Or like, is there like some kind of scarcity that you're, feeling deprived of? Or so like, what? I'm automatically thinking, okay, this wife is out cheating on her husband in some motel room, and Emma's thinking, oh, she must be out shopping for Christmas gifts. You know what I mean? So, how do we interpret? Why do I interpret it that way? Why wouldn't my knee-jerk response be what Emma's is? Because I'm bringing a lot of brokenness and betrayal and abandonment to my analysis. So, like, I want to see that. I want to factor that in, is all I'm saying. Emma.
A lot of people tend to see, like, the bad side of things, especially if it's completely out of the person's ordinary. Like, say, if a person usually fills up a cup all the way and it's only half full, usually people will say, oh, it's just half empty, fill it up more. When you could say, oh, it must be a mishap, at least it's still half full.
Yeah, and my wife has really helped me see, I keep saying this, but helped me see that I can choose how I see it. I get to choose to say it's half full. I can choose. So, yeah. What? Yeah. It's just half. Wow, that's, I'm stunned. I'm speechless, guy. I don't know what to do with that. Like, yeah. It's just half. Huh. Hope you all voted. Can I give you a historical fact? You know that Ronald Reagan, his second term, 1984, got like 537 electoral votes. Only 13 went to his opponent. I think it was Walter, who was it? Mondale? No. Was it Mondale? Or Dukakis? I think Dukakis was. So can you believe that? Doesn't that put it in perspective? Like, we're watching these electoral votes all night, all evening long, and you're like, that's a lot of electoral, but Reagan got that many? I'm like, whoa, that's a lot of electoral votes. That was the record for I think underneath that was Franklin Delano Roosevelt. But, what? Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Thanks, you guys, for being here. Thanksgiving, Christmas coming up. Yeah, appreciate you guys. So, hey, you know what? This qualifies you. I want to empower you. You guys are empowered to be counselors for other people. There's a lot of brokenness out there. There's a lot of people out there that need some encouragement and support that would never come to something like this. They won't pick up a book. So at the very least, you can recommend the book, But, yeah, help people, pass it on. So, yeah, see you guys next time. Hopefully not in 2 years.